Good evening, councillors, officers and members of the public in attendance and all our viewers live streaming tonight's meeting. My name is Julie Williams and I'm the Mayor of Darebin City Council, and I'm also the chairperson of tonight's Planning Committee meeting. This meeting is being live streamed via a link on the council website, so the public will be able to view the proceedings of this meeting. The meeting is also being recorded and will be made available on the council website as soon as practical after the meeting. It is my pleasure to welcome you all tonight at planning meeting, and I declare this meeting opened at 35 minutes past 6. Firstly, I'd like to welcome and acknowledge the traditional owners of the land. I'd like to say, acknowledging the Wurundjeri Wurrung people. And obviously it's a very emotional day today, been 15 years for the stolen generations for the apology. And for that reason, I also want to say thank you to the traditional owners and pay my respects to their elders, past, present and emerging, and also to recognise their continuing connection to the land, water and culture. Council's occupational health and safety responsibilities. The Chamber, whether virtually or in person, is both a workplace and a public space. And we have an obligation to ensure that all our working environment and public forums are safe for everyone, both emotionally as well as physically. Next, I'd also like to welcome our members this evening. So before I commence the actual meeting and our planning, I'd like to say thank you to our senior staff members and our councillors, and I'll introduce you our councillors we have this evening. We have Councillor Tom Hannon, Councillor Tim Lawrence, Councillor Trent McCarthy, Councillor Suzanne Newton, our Deputy Mayor, Councillor Susan Rennie and Councillor Lena Messina. I have apologies from Councillor Gaetano Greco and Councillor Emily Demetriadis. I would like to introduce our officers in attendance this evening. I have Rachel Olivia, who's our General Manager for City and Sustainability and Strategy. We have Catherine Pound, which is our Manager, City Development. Neil Cooney, our Assistant Manager for City Development. Dolan Boyle from Coordinator Priority Development, Matthew Cullen from Coordinator Statutory Planning, Alex McKenna Cox, our Priority Development Planner, and Shannon Clearance, our Planner. Do we have any disclosures of interest this evening from councillors or any of our officers?
No.
Thank you. If we do not have any conflicts of interest, I'll continue. The confirmation of minutes of the previous, I need confirmation of minutes and from the previous meeting, which is, councillors, do I have a motion for the adoption of the minutes from our previous committee, was held on the 14th of November 2022. I have a mover, Councillor Messina, and I have a seconder, Councillor McCarthy. I'll put that motion to vote. All those in favour? That is carried unanimously. I have a statement this evening of our condolences regarding the earthquake in Turkey and Syria. Before we start the formalities of tonight's meeting, on behalf of Darebin Council, I'd like to acknowledge the terrible situation following the earthquakes in Turkey and Syria. In particular, we send our support to our members of the Darebin community with family and friends who are impacted by this tragedy. The news reports and vision of the crisis is deeply upsetting, and we send our sincere condolences to those who have lost loved ones. I know the Darebin community is incredibly generous and caring, and would be wanting to lend a hand. For community members who would like to donate or find out how they can help, please visit the Darebin website for further information. Councillors, we have a number of items this evening, so I will go straight into it. And if we have, I'll ask councillors if you have any questions. I'll permit questions to our officers, and then we'll go on from from that to go to voting the item. Item 5, consideration of reports. The application, a planning permit for 20 Chingford Street in Fairfield. Officers will present the committee a brief presentation of the item. If there are any questions regarding the item, I'll ask our councillors to ask questions during that time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. This report concerns a proposal for permission to amend an existing planning permit to extend the hours of operation, increase patron numbers and make alterations to the internal arrangement of the existing building. Broadly, the amendment seeks approval for a further reduction in car parking requirements related to the existing use. The subject site is zoned Industrial 3 and is located in an area of industrial and warehouse uses, which also interfaces with residentially zoned land on the opposite side of Chingford Street to the south. The approved planning permit allows for use of the land as a caretaker's residence, a recreation facility and warehouse in accordance with the endorsed plans. It should be stressed that the use in question here is an existing one and has operated with planning permission since 2016. We received 7 objections to the amendment on the key grounds of traffic impacts, car parking availability, and noise and amenity impacts from the use. The proposal is compliant with relevant policies and provisions of the planning scheme. Notably, it will not unreasonably impact the amenity of the local community, provided that conditions relating to maximum patron numbers, a venue and patron management plan, and an acoustic impact assessment are implemented via conditions of approval. The approval of this amendment, importantly, will allow an existing business to continue to operate in Darebin in what is a suitable area. And accordingly, it's recommended to support the proposal and issue a notice of decision to amend the planning permit subject to conditions. I'd just finally like to note that we have an amended officer's recommendation to put before council tonight, which relates to an additional condition regarding the development contributions plan, a note for the same, and to also more clearly show the proposed conditions of approval for this amendment in bold, as you'd see in the agenda tonight, when we can hand out an example of that. And could we get that shown on screen, please, as well?
I believe councillors have a copy of that amendment also, and recommendation. Do councillors have any questions they'd like to ask? Okay, thank you to our officers. Therefore, if there are no questions, I will now ask for our submission. I'll ask for our submissions for councillors if we have submitters who would wish to address the planning committee this evening, if that's possible. Do we have any submitters who have put in to speak this evening? I believe I have Emilio Ricciuti. Would you like to come and stand and speak in the microphone? You have 3 minutes, Emilio.
Before I start, is it okay if I give out the councillors a hard copy of a summary, which I've emailed last week, but I just want to give them a hard copy. I was under the impression I would be using the PowerPoint, but Shannon advised last week that it wouldn't be available.
Sure, no problem.
It also includes signed petitions and statements and coloured photos that can be shared if they want to clarify anything in particular. And also, could I request an extra minute, if possible, on top of my 3 minutes for my presentation, please?
We usually only allow 3 minutes. I'll allow another minute at the most.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I'll start. We are a husband and wife team operating a small business supporting unique, creative, interactive and engaging programs. We have been at 20 Chingford Street now for 7 years. We bring a wealth of knowledge from our profession in dance, theatre, set design and set build, utilising upcycled materials, right in educational programs with dance and theatre as the primary form. We invested considerable time and money to create a space that supported our vision and community dealings, to support locals and creators with its primary purpose being the inclusion of children and families. The vision aligned with many Darebin strategies at the time. Also foster creative engagement that helps direct positive behaviour outcomes. The financial burden post-lockdown was taking its toll and we were losing business opportunities with our 50 patron limitation. We invited 19 Chingford Street households to an afternoon gathering in December 2021. 3 households attended. We shared ideas from our students and customers and asked neighbours for feedback. We also invited feedback and suggestions from other local residents, local creatives, artists, patrons and students. This information largely contributed to shaping our final proposals. We have over 100 signed petitions and statements whom support LRO Studios to continue to provide and expand their current business operations. We later engaged the services of an independent town planner before deciding how to maximise our current permit and operations to salvage our community space and livelihoods. Our amendment was to cater for 50 plus patrons, capping off at 100 at irregular times of the year, that is 30 to 40 times a year, for the reasons I have documented in your copy in page 2. This is to protect ourselves should a parent decide to bring an extra child that takes us over the 50 patron mark and offer the larger classes of 30 students to bring family at their presentations. To support NDIS programs which require extra carers and support and subsidise creatives offering opportunities for the community. However, our town planner advised that irregular times may not be supported, hence we were guided by his advice. Please refer to Appendix 5 for the response to the town planning recommendation report. We are currently in the process of organising a bike racks and will continue to support and implement the Green Travel Plan. As per the car parking summary on page 4, there was a number of important factors, yet the independent engineers survey still fully supported the extra 20 spaces. The surveys importantly only included the industrial sides of Chingford Street and Perry Street. The survey was conducted during a time of unusually high activity of moving trucks, vans and utes used by surrounding businesses, as well as a one-off hire we were supporting at the time, yet the traffic report still supported our application, which is addressed in page 4. In addressing the residents' concerns regarding car parking, we are more than happy to notify our customers of the appropriate places to park through our advertising material, booking options and signs as they enter the studio. We purposely limited our application by limiting the time for up to 100 patrons to 5 to 10 p.m. on an irregular basis for the following reasons. Surrounding business users will have closed, causing more car park spaces to become available on the industrial side, you can see in the photos. To ensure our application won't burden the neighbourhood, even though the traffic report generally supports extra 20 car spots outside the 5 p.m. to 10 p.m. period. In response to the residents' complaints, we are open to having an open discussion based on factual evidence, yet we were advised by Council that the complaints were verbal and undocumented. The Darebin City Council Planning Investigation Officer concluded these complaints to be baseless. It was also supported by a third party. The petition also reflects a gross misrepresentation of our application. Despite this, we've always been open to an open discussion with our neighbours and we will share that invitation. I've become aware that our councillors here today will be making a decision on the future of our business operations and livelihood. We trust it will be based on factual and documented evidence. We look forward to continuing providing our unique cultural offering and expanding creative services to our community and further continue to the child-friendly city. Thank you.
Thank you. Amelia, you actually only took an extra 20 seconds, the 3 minutes and 20 seconds, eh? I have Pamela Fergie Jackson as the objector, which in the gallery this evening. Would you like to come up and speak, please?
Hello, my name's Pam Fergie Jackson and I wanted to tell councillors that I feel like I have been bullied as I was threatened with the applicant's legal team for spreading rumours of 100 patrons and the serving of alcohol at wedding ceremonies. This, of course, was advertised on their website, so I was at a loss to understand this threat. In fact, I was out collecting signatures from residents regarding excessive parking, and by the number of people that signed, it seemed obvious that the local residents do not want such an intrusion into their life, and they also need to be able to park on the street. I now note on the Ella Rose website that they aren't offering this service. However, once the application has been granted, I presume they can put it back on their website again. There are just not enough spare car spaces for an additional 100 patrons. It was a nightmare when the film company came with many trucks, some with a generator. We could hardly get in and out of our driveway. As I stated in my submission of the 14th of June 22, I have had to vacate to a back bedroom, but I'm still bothered by noise. Obviously, soundproofing is not effective. I'm also very concerned about their school holiday programs where parents will be dropping off and picking up their children as young as 4, where there is no footpath on that side of the street. In Council's town planning report states, to minimise the impact on the amenity of the surrounding residential areas from traffic, noise and emissions. I do hope you take this clause into account tonight when making your decision, as naturally, if the application is granted, it will affect the amenity and value of our properties. I'm sure that you will agree that noise and parking issues must be addressed and will therefore vote in our favour. Thank you.
Thank you, Pamela. I have another submitter or objector, Scott, madam. Thank you, Scott. If you'd like to step up to the microphone.
Good evening, everyone. My name's Scott. I live at 19 Chingford Street, Fairfield, across the road from Ella Rose. The applicant has asked for an increase in capacity from 50 to 100 people, from 5 till 10. That's double the amount of people he's allowed now. My objection, firstly, is the noise this dance studio creates. You can clearly hear the music in your living room whilst they have anything on. I believe the soundproofing, if any, is not up to the required standard. The applicant wants to delete the loading dock, which has a roller door. Is the roller door soundproof? I don't think so. People leaving at night up till 10 p.m. is loud. Voices, doors, banging, revving engines. Now this is to be doubled. How do you cope if this was in your residential street? Car parking. The applicant has asked for an increase of up to 100 people. Even if 2 people arrive in one car, that's 50 cars. Chingford Street has not got that capacity. Cars from adjoining streets are now overflowing into Chingford Street. We get blocked into our driveways at times. As Pam said, Council Clause 22.4 states to minimise the impact on the amenity of surrounding residential areas from traffic, noise and emissions resulting from industrial land uses. How can this clause be upheld with what the applicant's asking for? Elderly residents like Pam and Winston have lived there all their life, have had to move rooms to the rear of their properties just to be able to get to sleep of a night with the boof boof and the noise coming from it. I'm sure, as councillors, you have visited the site and heard the sales pitch, which I'm sure was quite convincing. What you don't see and hear is the noise coming from that property, the comings and goings, and now it's to be doubled. Here's, I'll just pass those along. Here's some film production trucks I took some photos of that were parked out on the street on the night, one night with generators going. That was for over a week. So we couldn't get sleep. People left their delivery vans in the street for over a week and whatnot. So in closing, please consider the ratepayers' residents' concerns carefully. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. I appreciate that. Peter Dupush. Dupush, I apologise. Step up to the microphone. Thank you.
Good evening, all. If it's okay, can I also pass out something? I have plenty of paper tonight, but this is just a satellite image, basically, of Chingford Street, just capturing a few things which sort of show what's going on a little bit. So I'm Peter. I live with my wife and 2 young children at 31 Chingford Street, close to directly across the road from the applicant's address. I first wanted to talk about noise. So for a few years now, we've been putting up with the noise levels coming from the studio. Levels so loud that certain residents have had to relocate bedrooms to other areas of their dwellings. Personally, I struggle to read to my 7-year-old child at night who refuses to sleep upstairs in her bedroom because of the noise and has to come downstairs. I think that's unfair. I'm not sure, like Scott said, whether the soundproofing was ever inspected or installed properly, and I can't see how soundproofing from a steel roller door is ever applied. And I would request, and I think it's been mentioned earlier, that there would be some acoustic testing done. Added to that also the install of the terrace, although granted, Emilio, I haven't seen any of the plans. I don't know how you can soundproof a hole in your roof very well. I work in the construction industry myself and deal with this day to day. I've based some of the soundproofing or sound ideas around the EPA guidelines. Volume and intensity. The volume's so loud that, as stated above, residents cannot feel comfortable in their own homes. What the noise sounds like, i.e. its character. The noise is predominantly drum and bass, and percussion plays a major part. So therefore the constant banging, and it's very, very repetitive. Time and place, always in the evening. Times when people are trying to relax and whatever it might be, read to their children or go to bed. And how long the noise continues. Constant and repetitive through the whole session. Obviously added to this is after the session, there's people who gather outside of the street to discuss the evening, creating more noise past the allotted times. Secondly, I just wanted to talk about the little map I pointed out, and I didn't keep a copy for myself, if that's all right. If I can just refer to a couple of those points. Based off near map, and you can obviously scale this, and taking into setbacks from driveways, minusing bus stops, also taking into account the fact that there is no footpath along predominantly the whole length of the industrial side of the street. We also have, I've worked it out to be, and I could be wrong, but based on a 5.4 metre long car space, which is generally the allotted space, you can fit a potential of 44 cars in Chingford Street. You then need to take out Jump Swim School on the corner, who tend to park. They have 2 allotted
Thank you. Your time is over now.
Okay.
I've allowed an extra time, considering our first applicant had got extra time. So thank you. If you'd like to return to your seat. Councillors, this evening, as you see, that we have a recommendation there. Do I have a mover on the recommendation? Councillor Newton.
Thank you, Mayor Williams. I'd like to propose an alternate motion that's been circulated.
Okay. Can we have the the new recommendation, please, on the screen. I'll just allow councillors to have a read to ensure that that is your motion.
Yes, it is.
Councillor Newton, so you're the mover to the recommendation of your alternative motion. Do I have a seconder to that?
I'm happy to second that.
Councillor Messina. Councillor Newton, if you'd like to speak to the item.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Williams. So what we're looking at tonight is increasing this venue's capacity to 60 patrons from 9 to 5 Monday to Sunday, and my suggestion is to go to 100 patrons, 5 to 10 Monday to Sunday. So absolutely acknowledging the neighbours' concerns, but I do think that when we've looked at this one, I think there is an opportunity to go up to this higher level. It's a really big space inside, so I was very happy to visit last Friday. You can see how much space there is, and certainly when we've had discussions about it, I think there's a big opportunity for when there's children's concerts there, they might have one or two parents coming along. I imagine that they would either share a car to come there, or in my case, when I visited, I got there by bus, stopping outside Fairfield Bunnings and walked down. So there is public transport available as well, and I know that in our application there will be a requirement for bicycle parking as well. So it is really a beautiful centre inside. I know that we are absolutely looking to support our small and medium and large businesses across Darebin as much as we can, particularly in the post-COVID environment. It's such a wonderful centre. I think the creativity that's been put into it and the love that's been put into this centre is really remarkable. I really enjoyed the visit, and I'm a former dancer. I used to do a lot of swing dancing, and I know how incredible it is to be an audience member seeing live music and also live dancing and also as a performer. So really, really positive about the centre, and I really hope that many people will be able to visit, they'll be able to see their children and adults perform, and I think that this is a really good way to go forward. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Newton. Councillor Messina, have you been the seconder for this motion?
Yep.
Would you like to speak to the item?
Yes, thank you. Just briefly, I just want to echo the words of my fellow councillor, Councillor Newton. This is an interface of residential and industrial zone, and historically it's been zoned that way. And here we are in a planning committee meeting, and what council will vote on is a planning matter. And as councillors, it's important that we hear from our businesses and our residential, the ones that live residentially, and also the visitors, and all the voices are important. I'd like to thank everybody who is here this evening. But I'd also like to point out that whilst we also support residents, we also support local businesses, especially creatives, in the City of Darebin, and here what we have is an establishment that is beautifully being used based on the values that council set standards in their council plan when they're looking at reuse and creativity. This is a centre for the health and wellbeing of children, concerts. It's a beautiful centre, so therefore I'm supporting this. Also, I think it highlights an important interface and something that I know in the real estate world that sets with caveat emptor, which is buyer beware. It is a place where I think people need to look at far and beyond when they're purchasing and establish an industrial area, what that means to the residents, and also where people will go into the residential area to live. This is a place where residents and those who own businesses can come together productively and form an alliance in terms of what's best use practices, and that's where council comes in and looks at planning matters and ticks off the boxes. I hope together you can come to an agreement in terms of how you'll be working together rather than having this us versus them approach. So I look forward to the community supporting creative industry and supporting the local businesses in the area.
Thank you, Councillor Messina. Are there any other speakers for this item? Councillor Rennie, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Williams. I'd like to acknowledge all those who have come to speak tonight. It's a big step to come, and we very much appreciate it hearing from all of you. I'd equally like to acknowledge that this is difficult for residents in areas where there is a light industrial and residential interface. I live in a similar area, and sometimes I'm parked out when there are funerals in my area. It is inconvenient, and I acknowledge that. However, small businesses, and particularly small creative businesses, generate a lot of employment, and they actually generate a lot of joy for all those people who live in Darebin and are Darebin residents who come to enjoy venues such as this. There's no doubt in my mind that the venue itself is large enough to accommodate more people. And the people who come are entitled to park and to use the street and to use a venue such as this, just as the residents are entitled to enjoy their properties and to live free from disturbance. I do point out that in council regulations there are a number of ways to manage disturbances should they occur, and I'd very much encourage residents who are impacted by noise disturbances to actually get in touch with our enforcement team and to ask the team to act on any noise that's over and above the levels that are required. Also, in relation to parking, it is available to residents to request parking restrictions, which would limit the capacity of people who are in the area for non-residential purposes to actually use that car parking. Having said that, I think it is really important that we create civic and community spaces that people can enjoy, and I actually very much hope that the studio will reach out to neighbours once again and invite people in. To residents, I hope that you might decide to have a Christmas party here, and maybe that would be something that the studio could think about by way of demonstrating to you that there is value also
The
for
time's
you
up.
in having this type of facility in your neighbourhood.
Thank you, Councillor Rennie. Any other councillors who'd like to speak to the item or against the item? Councillor Lawrence.
I just have a question about clauses 14 to 30. Are they included in this alternative amendment?
I'll ask Rachel Olivier, thank you.
Councillor Newton, I know, I'm just wanting to check Councillor Newton's intent that the amendment was essentially the amended officers' resolution with all of the clauses, and then with the change that's shown on the screen.
Yes, correct.
Councillor Lawrence, would you like to speak for or against the item?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to, I'm happy to speak for the item. I was concerned that there's some very important conditions that officers have spent a lot of time considering in that 14 to 30. I appreciate the residents' concern about car parking. I think that's a legitimate concern. And noise at night exiting, coming and exiting from the site. Obviously, council has ongoing traffic dialogue with client and with residents, and I would hope that we paid particular attention to this in terms of our local laws and traffic planning there. However, the issue about noise, the difference between 80 and 100 people inside the building needs to be regulated by the actual machines and amplifiers that they use. So I don't see that the noise would increase from the 80 to the 100 that's been proposed by Councillor Newton, but I do think that we need to have a watching brief over respectful conduct in the street and encourage good neighbourliness from the business, and of course that will determine the success of the business too. So I'm happy to support the amended motion put by Councillor Newton.
Thank you, Councillor Lawrence. Are there any further councillors who would like to speak to on the item? Councillors, if there are no further debate, then I'll put the item to vote. All those in favour? I have Councillor Rennie, Councillor Newton, Councillor Lawrence, Councillor Williams, Councillor McCarthy, Councillor Messina, and all those against. And Councillor Hannan, you are sustaining. Thank you. The Planning Committee has decided to support the application and issue of notice of decision to grant the planning permit subject to conditions. This decision is not final. An objector can appeal the decision and the applicant can appeal any condition at VCAT. The proposed of appeal is subject to timeframes detailed on the documentation to be sent to the objector and the applicant. Thank you all this evening for coming. If you can kindly exit, because we would like to start the next planning application. Oh, well, but you can stay if you want to stay on, or if you're a next objector or an applicant. Thank you to our officers. The next item is 5.2, the ministerial intervention for 30 St George's Road and 32 and 36 Oakover Road and 47 to 49 Shower Street, Preston. Over to you, officers. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, everyone. This is the Department of Transport and Planning application regarding 30 St George's Road, 32 and 36 Oakover Road and 47 to 49 Shower Street in Preston. The application proposes the rezoning of land at 47 and 49 Showers Street from residential growth zone to mixed-use zone, and a mixed-use development comprising 480 dwellings, retail space, office space, alteration of access to a Transport Zone 2, and a reduction in the statutory car parking rates. The application has been referred to Council to seek a view of the proposal. The officer recommendation is that Council oppose the granting of the combined planning scheme amendment and planning permit, because the ministerial intervention process is not required in this instance, does not follow due process, and does not reflect proper and orderly planning. Notwithstanding this, officers have undertaken a detailed assessment of the development and are pleased to see that numerous improvements have been made to the design of the development in response to issues raised by Council. Officers have recommended a series of conditions that should be included in any permit should the Minister determine to approve the proposal. I'd just like to note that there is an amended officer's recommendation in relation to this proposal, if that could please be placed on the screen. Just by way of background, the Development Contributions Plan DCP overlay was reactivated on January 2023, on 25th of January 2023 via the Minister's approval of Amendment C 170 to the Darebin planning scheme. A development contribution is required for part of this development. The Council report incorrectly states that a developer contribution is not required, as the Department of Transport and Planning are the responsible authority. The amended officer's recommendation is to include an additional condition and note, which requires a DCP levy and an additional explanatory note under recommendation Part A, conditions for inclusion in any planning permit granted, as follows. Condition 36, prior to the issue of a building permit in relation to the development approved by this permit, A community infrastructure levy and/or development infrastructure levy must be paid to Darebin City Council in accordance with the approved development contributions plan overlay. And note 5, please note the development contribution plan levy will be invoiced separately. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillors, do you have any questions to our officers at this point in time? Councillor Rennie.
Thank you, and apologies that I didn't get time to ask this earlier, which would have been preferable. The social housing component, I think, is only limited to 15 years. What's the rationale for that, and is that something that we're pushing back on? Like, why wouldn't it be indefinite? Thank you.
Initially, in relation to the proposal, it was to be for a period of 15 years, which included construction time. Where we are looking to differ in that respect is to include the 15 years prior to the issuing of an occupancy permit. So exclude the construction time, I suppose. Whilst it would be beneficial to include, say, the social housing component in perpetuity, it can be difficult to do that at times. Yeah, thank you.
If I might, Mayor, would this council be able to make an amendment that was extended to 30 years in terms of our advocacy?
Yes, Councillor Rennie, you could move an alternate motion to amend the specific condition, and we can bring that condition up on the screen to extend from 15 years to 30 years. So I can ask governance to bring that up on the screen.
Thank you.
Councillor McCarthy, you have a question?
Thanks, Mayor. Look, my question's actually prompted by the additional point that officers have proposed to include in light of the introduction of the DCP, which wasn't part of the original officer recommendation, and that is just to confirm that should council's request an advocacy be unsuccessful, is there still an obligation for the DCP component to be included by the Minister, given that that has just been signed off by the Minister, should this be called in?
Councillors, any other questions you'd like to ask?
So that was a question, whether that's confirmed.
Oh, apologies.
Sorry.
Apologies, Councillor McCarthy. Could you repeat the question?
Sorry,
for me, please?
I'll ask it again.
Thank you.
So in light of the announcement just now that the DCP, the Developer Contribution Plan, has been signed off by the Minister, should Council's advocacy for this matter to remain in Council's jurisdiction and not be called in by the Minister be unsuccessful, would the Minister still be required as the planning authority to introduce the DCP, to introduce the Developer's Contribution requirement as part of any planning permit that was signed off?
Thank you, Councillor McCarthy, and thank you for repeating the question. Yes, and in fact, even if the condition isn't included, the way the DCP operates is that it's required anyway, so regardless, they'll have to pay a contribution. Thank you.
Councillors, are there any further questions you'd like to ask our officers? There have been no further questions, and as there are no submitters this evening for this item, do I have a motion? Councillor McCarthy.
Thanks, Mayor, or Chair. I have a variation on the officer's recommendation, which officers will have, which includes an additional point which has been circulated to councillors in relation to councillors' advocacy.
Thank you, Councillor McCarthy. I'll just give our officers a moment to put that up on the screen, and then if you can confirm that that is your motion. Is that your motion there, Councillor McCarthy?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Newton. Councillor McCarthy, as you being the mover, would you like to speak on the item?
Thanks, Mayor. Should I stand here? Yep. No, we're sitting, aren't we?
You don't need to stand.
Thank you. Thanks, Mayor, and thanks, Councillor Newton, for seconding it. So just to be clear, the proposal is to support the revised officer's recommendation with an additional point. The additional point is brought about by the fact that the application itself, and I would say the officer's recommendation, I think, to be really clear, is actually to say this is in terms of a set of outcomes, is very promising, but it is a decision that does not need to be called in. It is a decision that still can go through this chamber. There is an absence of a development plan that has been signed off, and that is an absence in this process. So we want the decision to be remaining in this chamber. It doesn't need to be rushed through the process, and I have every faith that if council was to make this decision, it would be not only endorsing but celebrating the excellent outcomes that have been negotiated to date in relation to social housing, disability housing and affordable housing. And they are to be applauded as proposed outcomes. What hasn't been clear, though, is the inclusion of the important local community benefits that will also come from this development should it proceed. And that is where council's advocacy to our local members is really important, because it's actually our local community that will be impacted should those components not be introduced. So just to outline, and this is hence the suggestion for council to let our local members know about what we would like to see happen here, is that we would like to see, and this is outlined in the report, a much safer pedestrian environment in Oakover Road. It is absolutely critical that we will see an increase in traffic. There is around over 400 units proposed as part of this development, which could equate to about 1,000 extra people in that section. So we want to make sure that there is a properly constructed pedestrian pathway, that there is a separated bike lane along the Oakover Road section heading east. That of course there is also attention paid to the access and egress from the site, and furthermore that we want to encourage pedestrian and active travel and active transport options wherever possible, so that we can reduce the car load on the local streets, but also improve the safety for all, both new residents in this development and also existing residents in the surrounding area. The state government has done an excellent job with the level crossing removal project. This project is just down the road from that, and we should have a well-integrated connection between the new bike path that has been, and shared path that's been put in under the rail line, and this development, because we want these residents to be able to walk to the Bell Station, to be able to walk to Thornbury Station, to be able to make access and make use of those facilities. So this is effectively endorsing the officer's recommendation to say we would prefer this decision be made in the chamber, but should the minister decide to call this matter in to have it go through the fast track process, these are the conditions that we would like prioritised, and hence also to let our local members know that this is what we're looking for, because I know that our local members want to see the best outcome in terms of safety, active transport and travel, and they certainly want to see those outcomes delivered as part of this project.
Thank you, Councillor McCarthy. Councillor Newton, you being the seconder for this item, would you like to speak on the item?
I think just very briefly, this is an important site and we do want local community involved. We want council involved in the decisions. So I think that the officer's recommendation makes a lot of sense, and I support everything that Councillor McCarthy said. So I will be supporting the officer's recommendation with the extra part from Councillor McCarthy.
Thank you, Councillor Newton. Councillor Rennie.
Thank you, Mayor Williams. I have an amendment. I had sent something round, but note that Ms Pound has made a recommendation, so I'll go with her recommendation, which is amend condition 27, part A, which would then say 20% of the dwellings to be nominated for the purpose of social housing for a period of time assigned with the registered housing party, but not less than 30 years post issuing the occupancy permit. I'd ask if the mover and seconder would support my amendment, please.
Councillor McCarthy, do you accept?
Very happy to accept that.
Thank you. And Councillor Newton, do you accept?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. Councillor Rennie, would you like to speak on your additional amendment?
Thank you. I'm generally supportive of the motion that we have in front of us. I just think it's really important to note that 15 years is grossly inadequate. I'm not sure that 30 years is any more adequate, but we've heard advice that making a condition such as this in perpetuity is or could be problematic. We know that there will be no less need for social housing in 20 years than there is today, and it's really important that we clearly send a message that 15 years 15-year clauses in situations like this are not adequate, and I thank Councillor McCarthy and Councillor Newton for accepting the amendment. I thank Ms Pound for her advice on wording too.
Councillors, are there any further speakers on the item? Councillor Lawrence, thank you.
Yes, Mayor Williams, I'd just like to speak in support of this motion and the detailed suggestions from the council regarding this development. I especially welcome Councillor Rennie's addition and amendment, because it's very important for us to understand the current big build of social and affordable housing is unprecedented. However, it is about half what we need to make up for the capital strike of the federal government and various state governments, with the exception, of course, of Kevin Rudd's stimulus some years ago. So since Howard, federal funds have vacated social housing. We've been reduced to the national average of public housing in this city. And the notion that rezoning mixed-use zones, which have a 370 to 400% capital uplift just when we rezone, that we only end up with 15 years of social housing, is fairly abhorrent. And so given that we're pouring state and federal money, there is money coming through into these type of developments for the affordable and the social housing. It's sort of a clawback that it only lasts for 15 years. That's not providing secure permanent housing, and that's not building and maintaining our community.
Thank you, Councillor Lawrence. Are there any other councillors who'd like to speak to the item or against? If there are no further speakers, then I'll put the item to vote. All those in favour? And that has been carried unanimously. Thank you to our officers. I appreciate your time. I'll go over to item number 6, other business. 6.1, general planning information, schedule VCAT applications. Do I have a motion? Two hands went at the same time. Councillor Massine. And I have a seconder, which is Councillor Rennie. Thank you. All those in favour, or anybody wants to speak on the item? No. All those in favour? That's been carried unanimously. Thank you. And I will have to say that that is now close of today's planning applications and planning committee. And thank you for this evening. And we are closed at 28 minutes past 7.